We don't want to keep people forever.
All right, it's 7:33 and the meeting has started recording.
Thank you. Good evening, all. It's 7:34 now. My name is Berlotte Antoine, the chair for the Parks and Beautification Committee. I'm calling this meeting to order. And with me, I have Miss Nicole Julius, the new co-chair for the Parks and Beautification Committee. Congratulations, Miss Nicole Julius, for accepting this position. I know that you already started doing a lot of things for our committee, and I wanted to greet you. I will give you 1 minute to introduce yourself to the member of this committee.
Again, it's a pleasure to be able to serve in this capacity. My name is Nicole Julius. I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone and just, learning from everyone as well.
Thank you, Miss Nicole. I hope that you all get a chance to see our agenda for today. And in our agenda, we have a presentation scheduled for today. The new composting requirement is one of the things that we want to discuss. So I will give my report after this presentation. Without further ado, I will ask our presenter to introduce himself and to take the try to share his PowerPoint so we can all enjoy. After his presentation, if you have questions, you can raise your hand, and Nicole and myself we will give you the right to pose your question, the possibility to ask your question. So our presenter is here. Teddy, please take the mic.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to talk to an organization like yours that's so committed to all this beautification of the parks and green spaces in your community. I think it's really key that we make the connections tonight about what we're talking about to beautification in the city, and I hope to make that definitely connect for you. My name is Teddy Tedesco. I'm coming from an organization called the Lower East Side Ecology Center, and I will speak briefly about it in a moment. But just to give, before I share my screen, I will be talking about the New York City Department of Sanitation's new mandatory curbside composting requirement or food scrap separation requirement for all New York City residents. And my goal here is to acknowledge and understand and connect with all people coming to this topic. So in my experience talking to many different buildings, primarily we are working with residential buildings in Manhattan to help them come into compliance with this new rule, and also giving presentations to residents, to community members, just to help people understand the benefits of this program and why it is relatively easy to participate while also acknowledging some of the real challenges that some buildings are going to have. But in my experience, there are people who are really skeptical of a program like this for a host of reasons. And then there are people on the other side who are extremely involved in the environmental movement and might feel disappointed where they feel this program is lackluster. And then there's kind of everyone in the middle who's just like, how do I do it? How do I make it simple? And so I really want to speak to all of those communities whenever I do this presentation. Hopefully everybody leaves feeling more satisfied with what the program is all about. So without further ado, I will share my slides. And you tell me if you see my full screen slides. I need auditory feedback, please.
Hi,
Not yet.
this is George. I don't see.
Not yet?
No.
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 No slideshow. Interesting. Okay, let me try time. And how about now?
Still
Not
no.
yet. Yeah, I think
It does say that it's
No
sharing. And connecting. It says that it's sharing. Oh, it's lagging on connection for whatever reason that might be. We can't. Okay, one more time. Try this.
I think you will be because when we first started, we had it. So
Yeah,
yes.
not sure why it's giving the problem.
Okay. Unverified. Gabriel is an authenticant or
Click
sign.
share. Buffering,
I,
can't share screen failed, unable to share at this time. Okay, so
yeah,
I don't know if it's possible because of the recording that's occurring. That doesn't seem right to me, but that's the
okay.
only thing that's changed since I had it working before.
Let me try to
Yes.
I was
change your
just thinking,
permissions or something.
I was
Maybe
gonna
that
say
might
that.
help. Yeah, give me 1 second, Teddy. Let me
No
try to make
problem.
you a co-host.
Yeah.
Okay, give it a try now.
Okay. Screen share failed, unable to share at this time. Very strange because it
Do you
worked
want to
just
sign out
fine.
and
I was
sign
gonna
up
say,
when?
what's happened to me in the past is that if you said, Teddy, you said that you see buffering, maybe you have to take your camera off. Maybe it's something with the signal. So you undo your camera, maybe.
Okay. I'm gonna do that, and then
Yeah.
my next example will be a quick sign out and sign back in. That's
Yes.
what it's gonna be after that. Sorry for the delay.
No, that's fine because this
No
had
worries.
happened before. Yeah. The last thing will be to send it to Miss Farah to share for us. That's the last
Technology is
thing.
always good
Yep.
when it
Okay.
works.
Oh
Same
yes.
failure, so I'm gonna pop out real quick.
Yes.
Give me a minute.
While you are doing that, I will ask. I think two more members came. Miss Voneta, can you please say hi and mute yourself and say hi?
Hello, it's Vanetta Sylvester. I'm new on the Parks committee. This is, and I really enjoy coming. So I really want to make sure that we're doing the most for our community to make public spaces green and as accessible as possible. Um, and that's it.
Thank you, thank you. I also have member Dorothy Gordon. Hi.
Yes, hi, team. Apologies for being late. My name is Dorothy Gordon. I'm fairly new to the community board as a member, but been to the community board meetings for years. And I'm excited because I love gardening and beautification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we will definitely need you because we have some project coming. God, planting and cleaning of the parks. You will all be invited. I will ask Mr. George Tate to say a few words while we are waiting for our presenter to come back with the presentation. I need to tell you that Mr. Tate was a former chair of this committee, but he was so kind to assist me when I first came in. He explained a lot of things to me. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for that. I will pass it on now to Mr. George State.
Good evening, all, and thank you for the kind words. Yeah, my name is George State, and I've been a committee member for a while. As Ms. Perlot said, I was a chair. I think it was 1922, but then I did not apply to be a board member again because I needed break. Yeah, we're going to some personal issues. But I'm glad to be in the Parks and Beautification. And to me, it's a very important committee and it's very active. And I'm proud of all of you guys that work with Bernard as a team to clean up our parks and beautify the area. So the newcomers are welcome, and to all the veterans, hello, and let's keep up the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tate. And Mr. Tate, do you want to give a brief update on the last park we cleaned? How do we do that? How do member can get involved? What advice you have for anyone on this panel?
In terms of cleaning the park, normally we do it with a like partnership for the park. Sometimes, like they will bring the all the equipment that we need, and then we would just go. We set a date, and then we go there and we clean the park. And sometimes, if we have plans, we could do plantings to beautify the park. We have done Padagat Park. We have done Nostrum Playground. And I think this year we want to do, we have cleaned up Tilden Park, but we really didn't do much planting around here. So I think this year, I believe we're going to do Railroad Park, if I'm correct.
Yes, we have Railroad Park on our list, and I don't know if other members want to add any other parks so we can kind of plan ahead of time. That's the
Yeah.
time that usually we do parks and planting. Yes,
Yeah, and last year we did clean up Railroad Park too.
yes. I feel that Miss Bennett was about to say something. Miss Adele?
No. I'm good.
Yes. I think that we have new members coming. Miss Bennett, did we ask you to introduce yourself? I don't think so. We talk about your voice, but nothing else.
Adele Bennett, committee member.
Okay, thank you. We have let me double check. Is Miss Farah is our presenter back?
Yes,
I am
he is
here.
back.
Okay. Were you able to are you
I
trying
have
to share?
restarted, and I'm gonna try to attempt to share again. I have emailed you a set of my slides, Berlote, in case that is
Okay.
the next step. But
Okay.
I'm gonna try it again right now
Okay.
and
Try right
see how we
now.
go. Fingers crossed.
If not, I will try to share for you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got it.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Yeah.
The
okay,
other
let's
member,
take it
I
away.
will ask you to introduce yourself after the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so
All
I'm going
right.
to talk a little more in depth about our organization, just very quickly. So, those of you who don't know, I come from an organization called the Lower East Side Ecology Center, and we pioneered community-based models in urban sustainability back in 1987, before the Department of Sanitation was even requiring the separation of plastic and paper in the waste stream. Our founders were hauling material from private areas to private recyclers down on the Lower East Side, founding a community garden on the Lower East Side, and generally trying to increase awareness of urban stewardship and sustainability. In terms of stewardship, we primarily do our stewardship work in Tompkins Square Park, marshaling volunteers and groups to plant bulbs and amend the soil and plant native plants. We also do educational workshops like this one, including fishing clinics for kids, but also other programming for adults, and also electronic waste pop-up events. So you might be aware that the Department of Sanitation requires all residents to recycle their electronic waste, but this material is not regularly picked up curbside like the other materials we're going to talk about. Large buildings can qualify to get as needed pickups from the Department of Sanitation, but they will not get regular weekly pickups. So most residents wind up having to find a place to recycle their electronics, and the Ecology Center hosts many such pop-up events throughout the 5 boroughs year round. They're very great, fun and interesting events. People come out of the woodwork with TVs from 1950, and I'm always wondering how New Yorkers are finding the space to keep these things for so many years. But people really do come out and bring all kinds of things to us. So that's a little bit about our organization. And I don't think I have to go into too much depth with a group like this. I think you know what compost is, but just a quick refresher, compost is a soil amendment. So we always want to make the distinction between compost as all organic material, 100% organic material, something that used to be alive and is now the remains of living things, and also obviously filled with other new living things, microorganisms, worms, all those things that make the soil great. Um, Soil itself is mostly mineral, so you are amending soil with compost. You're usually not planting directly into it. When we talk about where all this compost is being made and how it's being used, we're thinking about how on an annual basis we're replenishing the soil with compost, with this really rich black material that looks a lot like soil. And when humans are making compost, we're just trying to make it go faster. So that's our whole goal when we're making compost, is to make things decompose much more quickly than they otherwise would in nature. What you might take a year or two should hopefully take 6 months or less. And another quick little biological overview, it is the organisms that are doing the work. The humans are just helping them. We're creating the right conditions for all these little critters, microscopic and macroscopic critters, to break down organic material and turn it into black gold. So this is what we do, is basically farming these little organisms to do all the work on our behalf. So why is municipal composting important? Basically what I'm getting at is, why is the city bothering to do this in the first place? A new mandate for residents. We all have so much to do in our lives. The costs for residential buildings are skyrocketing. Why is the Department of Sanitation requiring this? So we like to break it down into 4 main groups of reasoning. The first one, environmental justice. I'm originally from Staten Island. Those of us of a certain age remember what used to be on Staten Island is the world's largest trash landfill. That was a huge quality of life issue for people like me growing up. There were higher asthma rates around that landfill. The smells were terrible. Trash was everywhere. Seagulls everywhere. It was a real blight. And now it is being turned into a world-class park, twice the size of Central Park. So it was a huge political effort to get that landfill shut down in 2000. And now it is being turned into something that is really going to be transformative for a lot of people living there. But we didn't really solve the environmental justice problem. We just moved it. So we're moved it out of New York City. But if you look all the way to the right, that little list of different places where our trash now goes, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, South Carolina, really far places. So we just moved the problem to some other communities far outside of New York. And in many ways, this is less responsible, right? Because we're not even taking responsibility for our own waste within our own city borders. You can see also the cost of that disposal, $500 million that the Department of Sanitation is spending every year just to ship trash to landfills far outside of New York State. We're not getting anything in return other than the benefit of getting rid of this trash. So we'll talk a little more about what we're getting out of this composting program right here in the city. The resource recovery rate is low. You can see from that pie chart, about 1/3 of our trash stream is organics that could be composted. This program is in its infancy, so we're not anywhere near diverting 1/3 of that material to composting right now. Most of it is still going in the trash, but that's rising every month as people comply with the new mandate. So we want to increase that as much as we can so we can recover those resources, use them in the city, put them to good work right here in the city. And then finally, the greenhouse gas emissions. So we were talking about composting as a decomposition process. Well, within landfills, a different type of decomposition process happens. When you bury food scraps deep into a landfill without much oxygen present, a different type of decomposition occurs. It's much slower, so food decomposes at a much, much slower rate. And the product is methane. Methane is what makes a landfill smell, and it is also a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. It's really bad for the environment, and that's what happens when we're in a landfill. Now, when we compost material, carbon dioxide is given off, but it's not the carbon dioxide we're worried about with climate change. It's not the stuff that's buried in the ground. It's the carbon dioxide that's part of the natural biological cycle. All the organisms that used to be alive were building their bodies with these carbon molecules, and now it's going back into the air. So it's not adding to the climate change problem. It's actually just kind of bringing us more into balance with these kind of natural processes. So into the details, separation of yard waste and food scraps is now mandatory in New York City. Notice I say separation of yard waste and food scraps. Every one of your food scraps does not need to go into a brown bin that's picked up by the Department of Sanitation. If you like composting in your backyard, if you like composting in a community garden, If you like using those orange bins that are in some parts of the city now, you can continue to put your food scraps there. Now, many of these alternative composting programs do not take all of the same items that the curbside program takes. The curbside program is much more comprehensive, and we'll talk in more detail about that. But you can continue doing what you're doing and then add the curbside process as another part of your normal procedures for composting. I think 99% of New Yorkers are going to find that it's obviously most convenient to just use the bins in their building. But those of you who are active composters another way should feel free to continue doing it. How did this come about? Local Law 85 of 2023, just so you know what's the mandate for it. And the curbside composting service is active throughout the city now. And we are all expected as residents within our units to separate leaf and yard waste. So if you have house plants and old soil and things like that, old flowers, cut flowers, food scraps, and food soiled paper. So we're thinking really about food waste and plant waste. Must be separated from trash by residents. This is something that is going to be new for a lot of residents. So I've learned working with many buildings that many buildings are only in compliance with existing recycling laws around plastic and paper and metal and things like that, because we have really great porter staff and supers and building staff that are doing a lot of work pulling these contaminants out of the trash, separating them out, and trying to reduce the number of fines that our buildings get. But it's going to be virtually impossible for porters to actually separate food scraps out of the trash after the fact. So a lot of residents that aren't accustomed to already separating trash in their own units are going to have to become accustomed to that for this to work. And that's really important to keep in mind. A, all the hard work our porters do already, and B, their limitations and what they cannot be expected to do going forward. And that is separating out our food waste. So most familiar we are with the brown bin, but buildings are not required to use that bin. Department of Sanitation was making one bin available to every address in the city, every residential address, regardless of size. So if you were a 1,000-unit co-op or a single-family home, you got one bin. So you're not going to get more bins from the Department of Sanitation. But the good news is you don't have to have that bin. You can use any 55-gallon or less bin as long as it has a closing lid, and that should be listed here, a closing lid. And leaf and yard waste alone can be in a clear plastic bag put at the curb, as long as it's not mixed with food scraps. So why a bin for food scraps and not for leaf and yard waste? We are trying to containerize all of the food waste in New York City, not only to make compost, but also to reduce the rat problem and the pest problem and the odor problems from putting black bags on the curb that are easily torn open by pests and also don't contain odors. So containerization is part of this process. Food waste must be containerized. Leaf and yard waste alone can go in a clear plastic bag at the curb, but if that leaf and yard waste is mixed in with food scraps, it all must be containerized because it's understood that it is now contaminated with food scraps. Buildings with 4+ units must provide a clearly marked storage area for the collection of compostables, but there is leeway for buildings. So buildings are not required to provide a 24/7 site that residents can go to. Buildings are not required to put a bin in every shoot room on every floor. They can put a bin in the basement and expect residents to go down to the basement. For some residents, this is more difficult than others, and there are real challenges for some people with mobility, with ease. Some buildings that elevators are really hard to come by because they're constantly being used, and it's a real process. So for some buildings, this is easier than others, but it should be understood that this is a big undertaking for buildings. So buildings really do need to have some patience from their residents as they learn how to collect this new material properly in bins. A lot of buildings are really relying on those black bags just kind of disappearing from the curb every week, multiple times a week, and this provides a new set of logistics that a lot of buildings are finding challenging as they roll this out. And a new complication is that curbside collection of food scraps is going to be once a week on the building's recycling day. And this is a really new thing because most food scraps now that go into the trash are being picked up at least 3 times a week by the Department of Sanitation. So now it is a building's responsibility to store food scraps for up to a week. And this can be difficult. Even though they're being containerized, do you have enough containers? Are they overflowing? Are residents keeping the lids closed, right? So a resident that is putting that first new bundle of food scraps into a bin on that in that first clean bucket, in that first clean bin, those scraps might be there for 7 days. And that resident should really be thinking, am I doing this in as tidy and considerate a way as possible to make sure that I'm not kind of the weak link in this whole effort here? And I think a lot of residents are going to have to rethink that mindset too, of really how much care are they putting into this. And then enforcement with fines is currently active. So how does that work? The Department of Sanitation can send enforcement agents to root through your trash and look for things that don't belong there. They can do that with existing recycling, and they'll do that with composting. And the fine, they could issue a warning, and then they can issue escalating fines that for larger buildings can start to really add up. And those fines, they could infinitely continue levying fines. And I've talked to some buildings that are thousands of dollars in arrears on fines. Other buildings don't seem to have much of a problem. I can't speak to the enforcement formula or kind of logic around how it is actually done. I'm sure a lot of it depends on the individual enforcement agent, but I think anybody living in a building should understand that these fines really add up and they just take away from things that buildings want to do that are positive for their residents. So let's avoid them. Let's talk about what goes in. So this is the satisfying news that this is actually very easy and comprehensive. This program takes all leaf and yard waste. So anything that's being raked up out of buildings, like I said, leaves on the street can be bagged up in a plastic bag and put curbside, but also residents can put dead plants, dead flowers, old potting soil, old potting mixes, old compost that you're not using or whatnot can all go into the building's collection bin and be picked up by sanitation. For food scraps, it's fruit and vegetables, which are the traditional things that most composters are familiar with, but it also includes now meat and bones and dairy, prepared foods, greasy foods. You scrape your plate right into your compost bin now instead of the trash. Everything that other composting programs can accept, sanitation can accept. Even the little sink strainer at the bottom of your sink that fills up with that great potpourri of all the things that have been going into your sink, I put that directly into my compost bin now too. So there's really almost nothing food related that goes into my trash anymore, including food soiled papers. So your paper napkins, your towels, paper towels, tea bags, coffee filters, pizza boxes, plates. I like to say that if it grows, it goes. That's kind of the mantra. So anything that was an animal or a plant that was used for food or for food soil paper, it can go. So food soil paper is no exception because it was made out of a plant at some point, whether it was bamboo or tree or whatnot. Pizza boxes is the one I get asked about because they are regular in size and shape and they don't fit into a bin very easily. All the other things kind of fit pretty easily, but pizza boxes don't. And it's really up to the building to decide, are we going to create a separate collection area for pizza boxes that are soiled with food? Or are we going to expect residents to kind of tear up their boxes and put them in the bin? Talk to your building about what their plan is. We also get questions with the pizza boxes. What if they're clean? Do they go into paper recycling? If they don't have any food residue on them, they should be recycled with paper. But if they are, most pizza boxes have grease and cheese and things like that. All of that should go into the compost whenever it's food soiled. What things shouldn't be going into the bin? Your existing recycling streams like metal and glass, plastic, your milk cartons, your clean paper. Those are all existing recycling streams. But what are the exceptions to organic waste? The things that are pet waste and human waste. So remember, this program is about food type products, but we don't want things like pet waste. We don't want cat litter. We don't want, hamster bedding. We don't want hygienic products. We don't want diapers. We don't want medical waste. We don't want foam We don't want those things. Those should all still be going in the trash or into the toilet where they belong, for a couple of reasons. One is the concern about spreading disease through human and pet waste. And then the other is really the dignity of the workers on the other end. We'll learn that this is a largely mechanized process of making the compost, but human beings have to interact with what comes out of the compost bins a lot more than they interact with what comes out of trash bags. So really thinking about them from that standpoint as well. And just a quick overview of your existing options for all of these materials, just so everyone knows. We're talking on the left about the curbside composting program. There's the brown bin. Again, your building is not required to have that exact bin. In the middle are smart bins, and you see these mainly all over Manhattan, but there is a presence in every one of the other boroughs. And they take all the same materials that go into that brown bin, but you are limited kind of by the size of that slot on the front of the bin, and it requires a phone app to unlock. A lot of people say, why? What's the point of this? Well, whenever you put a bin on the street, and even if it's labeled with what goes in there, if it is not locked, if there isn't some kind of barrier to entry, it will quickly become indistinguishable from trash. We're all guilty of doing this at one point in our lives, of just not really reading the sign and putting it in the bin. So the barrier to entry of requiring your phone to unlock the bin is there. Some smaller residences, especially like brownstones or walk-ups, all 3 or 4 units might agree, you know what, we're just going to use the bin that's local to us, so we don't have to worry about having our own bin. That's perfectly fine. Even if you're in a larger building and these are convenient for you on your commute or something like that, feel free to continue using it. You are taking some of the pressure off of your building to manage the food scraps. Sanitation is cleaning these, taking care of these, so make use of them if you can. And then on the right are food scrap drop-off sites. So these are the ones that my organization runs and many other nonprofits or schools or volunteer groups. These are the traditional ones that really only take fruits and vegetables and some limited other types of items. They don't take meat and dairy. They don't take greasy foods, because those are all very difficult to compost by hand. They require a lot of effort, and they could become a nuisance in communities. So that's why they don't take those things. So where is it all going? One of the things that I hear a lot is, this isn't actually going to be done. It's all kind of BS. That's a reason why I shouldn't participate, but it actually is happening. The main site is Fresh Kills, formerly a landfill, now a park on Staten Island. And this is a picture from the site of a huge mountain of compost that was made. Most of the food scraps collected on Staten Island are processed here, and ever increasing amounts from the other boroughs are going there now, as they have to scale up with the increased usage of the program. Collected leaves and yard waste citywide are processed here from parks, from all different types of sites. Private landscaping businesses can drop their waste here for a fee, and they can receive finished compost. And even better is city residents can receive free compost. And you're probably acquainted with this, but if you go to nyc.gov/getcompost, beautification organizations like yours might even be able to get delivered right to the site of a project, pallets of compost from the site. Otherwise, residents can go to these sites and get bagged material within certain limitations. But what's great is that this material is being used in the city. The Parks Department is using it. Other organizations are using it. They are turning what used to be just financial burden and an environmental justice burden into a product that is valuable and usable within the city. So that's what's great. And I just want to go back because I remember that I forgot something. For the curbside composting bins, and you can't see it clearly in this picture, but the Department of Sanitation also requires that any of the curbside composting bins that are put at the curb must be lined with a clear plastic bag. And we'll talk in a moment about how that works. But when this program was originally piloted, which started, like 10 years ago with some of the pilots, The Department of Sanitation were not asking you to line your bin with a clear plastic bag because they understand that introducing a lot of scrap plastic into a composting process is not ideal. But it was quickly realized that this was going to be a huge barrier to entry for the average person. Most people don't have access to a hose to rinse out a bin full of sloppy food scraps every week. It just wasn't going to work if plastic bags weren't allowed. So it is now mandated that there be plastic bags in every bin. Also, sanitation workers, they might not be picking up the bin. They might just be pulling the plastic bag out of the bin. So we'll talk in a minute of how it works to have plastic in the system. But yeah, so Fresh Kills is where the main composting action is happening in New York City, and it is scaling up every day. And it's an impressive site, and tours are done occasionally of the site. You can go see it in action. The other site where material is going to is called Newtown Creek in Greenpoint. You're probably familiar with this site if you've ever driven on the BQE. You'll see those big silver, what are called digester eggs. And this is a sewage treatment plant. They also give really interesting tours. It's actually a beautiful site with some beautiful landscaping as well. It's a state-of-the-art site. And what happens is sewage from some parts of the boroughs is mixed with the food scraps that come out of this program. And instead of being composted, they go into these digester eggs, and basically little miniature landfills are created in these domes. But instead of the methane going into the atmosphere, the methane is harvested and is piped into the gas grid of New York City. And right now, something like 5,000 buildings can receive heating assistance from this site. So it's way better than sending food scraps to landfill to just capture the gas and to use it. There are some people who really want there to be more composting and less of this. And, however you might rank the hierarchy of reusing material, this will be part of the city's long-term vision. Both traditional composting and what's called anaerobic digestion to produce methane gas. Both of these are here to stay, and this is how the city is planning to reuse food scraps. And just a little more detail about food scrap drop-off sites, since we are one of the organizations that run them. Feel free to continue giving us your scraps. We make them even more locally, not on Staten Island, but we're making compost right in communities and doing it responsibly. And the compost is then being used hyper-locally on the streets and in community gardens. So you can consider your continued usage of these sites as like a donation to our organizations to continue doing great community work. But remember the limitations that these sites have. And you can find a compost drop-off location at nyc.gov/compost. You'll see sites like this, and you'll also see a full map of the smart bins and where they're located. So how is plastic allowed into this system? So each of these sites that the Department of Sanitation contracts with must have what's called depackaging systems. They're sophisticated machines where, and you could look online if you search on YouTube, Tiger brand depackaging systems. They basically feed all the bags of food scraps into these systems, and it spits out an organic pulp on one end, and then it spits out the scraps of plastic on the other end. The scraps of plastic do have to be landfilled because they really don't have any recycling value. There's no market for that type of kind of pulverized plastic on the other end that's heavily contaminated with food waste. So that part does get landfilled, but the organic material pulp gets mixed with wood chips and horticultural waste. That's how they make the compost. These are cool systems, and they make a good usable product. And it's a good way that the city has figured out how to kind of split the difference on allowing plastic into a system, but still getting something useful out of the process. The good news about this depackaging process and the ability to use plastic is it means residents can also bag their material. And I think that's really important for people to understand, especially people who are skeptical about using these programs, is it does not have to be hard. So on this slide, you see some examples of what people might use. So traditionally, you might put your food scraps into a container, something like this, an old Tupperware, or a dedicated countertop pail for composting, and you might dump that bin into your building's central collection bin. Some people like doing that. They don't want to use more bags, and that's perfectly fine. You have to bring the pail back up and rinse it out. Listen to your building. So your building might ask that you actually put your food scraps in a plastic bag to cut down on odors and prevent pests. Really consider what your building is asking you to do. They're not required to make you put things in bags, but if they're asking you to do it, it's probably because they are having some kind of nuisance issue with the bins. But otherwise, what's great about the plastic bags is we have a lot of this free stuff coming into our house all the time. I don't buy any additional bags. I'm reusing old Ziploc bags, as you can see here on this next slide. Old brown bags, right? Brown grocery bags. They are not ideal for storing food scraps long term, but if you're making a big meal that night and you have the grocery bag right there, scrape your plates into the bag, put all the food prep from that big meal, and then bring the bag right down to your building's central collection bin, and it's gone. And what's nice about the brown paper bags is they actually will wind up as part of the compost. Old plastic delivery bags. Those can be used. Fill up the bag and tie it up. I like to use old produce bags. I get tons of produce bags all the time. I fill them up. I could fill one up for like a week. Then I tie the bag closed and I put it into the central collection bin. Pictured here are also a few different types of countertop bins. If you like using those, feel free to do so. I personally don't like having more stuff on my counter, so I just use a bag. I just fill a bag up and then I put it into the central collection bin. On the bottom left corner is a picture from a consultant we work with who I really like, has a picture of how they turned their existing kitchen pail into a split bin. So on the right side, they used clips to put a plastic bag, and the plastic bag is actually for the food scraps, and then the brown paper bag is for the trash because the trash doesn't have any food waste in it anymore. So you could use a brown paper bag. So it could really be that easy. You're putting all the stuff into the same bin, but now you've just divided it down the middle, and I'm going to put some stuff on one side and some stuff on the other side, and making it super easy for residents. And I hope that when you bring the message back to skeptical people, you'll let them know like it could be this easy. You don't have to really think that far outside of the box to make this work. Reusing other containers like yogurt cups, again, you'll have to dispose of those containers another way. You'll have to recycle them eventually, but you can feel free to do that as well. And so what should be done if your building isn't participating? Talk to super or management office. It's hard, obviously, to prioritize. What are we going to talk to our supers about? What are we going to talk to our management? What are we going to talk to our landlords about? There are so many challenges, so many priorities. It's hard to broach this type of subject, but you can remind them that it's the law and fines are coming, and we don't want not an additional penny of charge going toward rent increases or common charge increases or anything like that. So from that reason alone, we should be in compliance with this law. The Department of Sanitation on their website actually provides management trainings and super trainings. So if they go to the Department of Sanitation's website, they can actually find like video recordings if they need a way to kind of brush up on how to manage the best practices around this program. And talk to your neighbors. A group like yours that is environmentally minded and beautification minded can really make the connection for people that this isn't just another government mandate, that the work that organizations like yourselves are doing connects directly to what residents are doing. When they throw out those food scraps are being made into usable products that can be used right here in the city. And I think making that big picture connection is the best way to motivate people. Just telling them that they have to do it is kind of like the lowest level of engagement you could possibly have. But showing them that this stuff really matters and is making a difference is important. And of course, reach out to us for additional support. Myself and my partner will actually go to buildings and talk to management, talk to staff on how they can manage best practices. We'll do presentations like this for groups of residents. It could be a standalone presentation or incorporate us into a resident meeting. We could do it in person, we could do it virtually. We're doing these types of presentations all the time. And again, for building management, they could attend the virtual trainings with the Department of Sanitation or reach out to us for more kind of customized trainings. Ordering more bins. So the Department of Sanitation maintains a third-party website with kind of discounted bins. So it's just bins.nyc. So if you want more of these brown bins, if you want more trash bins, you can go to this site and you're going to get pretty high value deals on bins. But again, if you like going to a different supplier, you want to use different bins, as long as it's just 55 gallons or less with a lid and lined with a clear plastic bag, you can use that. But of course, if it's not the official sanitation bin, you'll need one of those decals, which the Department of Sanitation can provide. And just a reminder about leaf and yard waste, that can just be in a clear plastic bag. You don't have to worry about containerizing it. And just a quick reminder, this is happening on your recycling day. So it makes it easy to remember. But again, how are we storing those food scraps for a whole week? And set out times, that's something that has really been a new change too. So if you are now containerizing your food scraps, those can go out at 6 p.m. But non-containerized trash in black bags, that has to now go out at 8 p.m. And the idea is just to reduce the amount of time that's on the street, to reduce the rat problem. But this has created new challenges because a lot of hoarders were accustomed to a more traditional 9 to 5 schedule, and they've had to shift their lives to accommodate now much later set out times, whether it means working later or coming into work earlier. And it's been difficult for them and their families. So again, keep them in mind, the challenges that your building staff go through when they're trying to implement a program like this. And finally, just a quick reminder, these pictures on the right are pictures of perfectly good food that have been dropped off at our food scrap drop-offs, perfectly edible food. It would be a real shame if people thought just because we're composting now that we should be wasting food. We would much rather all of this food be consumed by people. So either eat it yourself, donate it to a neighbor in need, or donate it to a food pantry before you compost it. That's going to be the best use of the food scraps. And any further questions, this is the direct line for my program, Curbside Compost, at lesecologycenter.org. And we can be contacted at any time for further questions. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer more of your questions. So let me know them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the great presentation. It's very needed. I have question in the chat, and I also posted for people to raise their hand so I can give them, call them one by one. And I know Coach Nicole will also help me with that. The first question is on the chat. Gabrielle, do you want to unmute and pose your question and ask your question? So I will go, I don't hear from Gabrielle. I will go to the next person. Dorothy Gordon.
Yes, hi, and again, thanks for the presentation. It was helpful. Thank you. I had a couple of questions. On one of the slides, you talked about no cartons but it was okay for paper plates, right? So cartons, does that mean like that cardboard Chinese food restaurant thingy carton? Is that the
That's a
carton you're
great
talking about?
question. That's a
Because that's
great
like a paper
question. Yeah.
plate.
So traditionally, I mean, cartons have always been kind of confusing because people are like, are they paper or are they plastic? They should go, like milk cartons should actually go into your plastic recycling, not paper. And it is a little confusing, but it's basically those types of containers are called aseptic packaging, and they have like a substantial plastic lining in them. They're not really like paper. So when we're thinking about food soiled paper for the composting program, think about like flimsy things, right? Think about like when you put when you put the pizza down on that paper plate and the grease is already starting to go through the plate. Like you can kind of imagine that paper is already starting to kind of break down and become food soiled. Whereas the things that are super durable, if it's kind of hard to tear them, if they have like a waxy or plasticky liner on them, if they're aseptic packaging, they can go into the plastic um, recycling, but many of them might just go into the trash. And it's not always easy to distinguish these things. It's kind of a little bit of a challenge sometimes. But basically, your cartons and things like that will go into the plastic. But some of like the Chinese takeout containers, they're very much wax or plastic lined, and you can just put them into the trash. When it comes to food soil paper, really thinking the napkins, the servingware, that kind of stuff that is basically just made out of plants and is going to break down readily.
Okay. Can I ask some other question? I'm sorry. Can I ask other question
Sure.
about you mentioned about the paper, sorry, the plastic bags. I thought it was a no, but you confirmed that we can. Let's say like the produce bags. If you have one on your counter every day, so now you're gonna have a whole bin full of paper plastic within a plastic.
Absolutely, yep.
So that's
And
fine.
the depackaging systems can handle all of that plastic within plastic. And that is a big misconception that a lot of people have. They understand that the bin has to be lined with plastic, but they don't think you could have plastic within plastic. And again, I think this is very important information for your average person to know, because a lot of people are going to find using a bin kind of frustrating in their apartment. And as long as they can just bag it up. One thing that I didn't mention that I do to make sure that it doesn't ever smell is I bought little plastic clips. You could even use like chip bag clips or even binder clips. Every time I'm done filling the bag with food scraps, I just clip it shut and I can fill that bag in my apartment for like a week and I won't smell anything. So clipping the bag closed each time is maybe a new practice, but it really helps on cutting down on odors. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Member Doherty.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I see. Gabriel
Yeah,
was trying to unmute. Yes.
yeah, I'm on mute now. So I'm wondering, is there anything being done to encourage um, larger buildings to kind of do as much in-house as possible, like with green roofs and stuff like that?
So there's always encouragement to, we're always encouraging our organization to do as much as you can within your home, especially within a building, especially with composting. That said, obviously composting things like meat and dairy on site is not recommended because it's very hard to do by hand. But with rooftop gardens, it is complicated because there's a lot of permitting and special assessments that have to be done for a rooftop garden to make sure it's up to code, to make sure it's going to bear the enormous weight of a garden. So it's not something that could really be done super easily, and that the city can kind of put out a one size fits all kind of promotion for. But what would happen is if you had, like, say, a large co-op building or apartment building or rental building that did have a really good publicly or accessible for the entire building community garden, you might be able to get deliveries of compost right to the building used to amend that garden. And what's great about the rooftop gardens is they are really good with absorbing a lot of moisture. We've been having these crazy rains for the past few years that seem to get only worse and worse, flooding city. And if you have more surface area of the city gardened and covered with compost, you're actually creating a big sponge that absorbs water and prevents it from going into the streets and sewers. So it's definitely something good, but rooftop gardens, it's really kind of a case by case thing. There isn't like the city is just promoting them everywhere, because there'd be some real safety issues involved if they're not to code.
Is there anyone that a building could contact?
I could follow up with Barlotte and maybe that she can share that information if I track out anything for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. We have now Member Walsh. Unmute and ask your question.
Hi, yes, good evening. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was excellent. I just had a quick question. I was wondering, is it possible for sanitation to pick up the compost more than just once a week? Since the food scraps are being collected and they're together, of course, the smell to me is larger than when it was just placed in a black bag. So if they could pick up the compost maybe twice a week with the black bags, I think that would be helpful to help, deter unwanted pests like rats and things like that, which a city is trying to do. Have they thought about that at all?
So it is a very common question. It is not under consideration anytime soon. The reason for it is there's not enough participation. So the city, and I'm not privy to any special insight into this, but the city is really not going to add additional days until they see compliance really go up. There is obviously a real cost to adding more pickups. And this is where my job is to really make it as easy for residents to just start doing it, because I think it is the amount that's collected and its increase that is going to determine if the city makes the choice to add more days. So we don't really even do a great job with recycling in the city. We don't get a lot of that material. A lot of residents, a lot of stuff is still going into the trash. And my fear is that a program like this, without a lot of compliance, kind of muddles through for many years at a low level of compliance, and basically it never gets the chance to improve because the city basically thinks that residents don't care about it because they're not doing it. So what I would say is encourage as many people to do it, tell them how easy it actually can be, and talk to your council member about how important you think it is to add more days, but also being positive and saying how much you appreciate the program, how much you're really trying to get people to do it, and that we really want more days. But like, this is kind of a building the plane while it's flying situation, these types of programs. And I wouldn't expect them to add more dates until a lot of people are actually participating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, member.
Berlot, you're muted.
I think the next hand I see raised is Jody Walsh.
Sorry,
I just spoke. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Tate, I see your
Yeah.
hand
Yes.
raised.
Yes. Okay. I do have a number of questions, but first I really want to thank you, Mr. Tedesco. That was a great presentation. And the first thing I'm going to ask, is it possible to share the slides with the committee? Because there's a lot of important stuff in there.
In fact, I already have with Berlot, so she can
Okay.
share. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to start with it because I did have a question regarding, and I don't remember who was the one who brought it up about the piece of axes and so forth. But in soil, like example, those boxes that come from Popeyes and Texas, or McDonald's, those things that they are soiled, but that's a question mark. And they also have that plasticky thing, you know, I forgot what to call that paper that in there.
Yeah.
So all that is soiled. So it's a question mark.
That's great. I'm thinking of the Popeyes now, and I would say Popeyes, I think if you rip it, you could rip it pretty easily, right? So that's kind of the test, right? If you can like rip something super easily, it's basically paper. So those Popeyes containers could go into the compost bins because they aren't really that lined with anything. But then if you were to try to rip, I think, you know, you can imagine those like brown containers that you get from some takeout places like higher end restaurants and whatnot.
Right.
Those, you know, if you try to rip them, you're really kind of resisted by that waxy lining. So I would say Popeyes, yes. But some other containers, no. And it is kind of hard to distinguish sometimes, but just try to rip it. And if it rips super easily, it's food soiled paper.
Yeah, because I normally like those Popeyes and things like I rip whatever is clean, I put it in with the paper, but whatever is soil, I put it in the compost. I just want to make sure that
Yep,
I
you're doing
was
it
seeing.
right.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have is in terms of like the grease, because a lot of these meats they have like, and you mentioned greasy stuff, but when we cook in, let's say for instance, if you do like a roast of pork and you have the grease, I take that, I put it in a bag, I freeze it, I put it in the garbage because I don't think that's not compostable. Like the fat. Hmm.
Large amounts of
Yeah,
oil, like cooking oil. So if you're like frying
yeah,
chicken or frying, something in deep frying,
right,
um, you shouldn't be pouring it down drains for starters, because
right.
that's really
Mhm.
bad for the sewage system. It really clogs it up. But
Mhm.
you are really thinking about small amounts, tiny amounts. If like a little bit of grease goes into the composting bag, it's not a big deal. But large volumes of it, put it back in a container or do what you're doing and put it in the trash. So that is what the Department of Sanitation is expecting. Even if it's like you're putting it back in the big Mazzola container,
Yeah,
even though it's plastic, you could label it and say cooking, filled with oil. If you're concerned about, it being considered plastic, you can just like write on it and put it in the trash. Department of Sanitation, if you do go to their website, they have like a little search bar that's like, how do I get rid of X, Y, and Z? If you put in cooking oil, they'll also link you to certain grease disposal options, but they're usually for businesses, like
yeah,
large scale ones.
right.
The advice is basically for the average resident to just put it in the trash.
Yes. Okay. And then one more thing is, oh, oh, no, I think you mentioned that we could get, we still could get free compost from, right. Okay, and also the green bins that you were showing, we used to have them in the neighborhood because before we got the brown uh, bins, I used to take them to like Newkirk and Nostrum. They used to have one, but then they
Yep.
stopped that. I think it was last year, May, that they stopped doing it. So are there still in every neighborhood, or it's only certain neighborhood that have those green?
Those were operated by organizations like ours, and they were kind of traditional community food scrap drop offs. And a lot of the funding for those operations was either completely eliminated or pared back significantly in anticipation of there being service to every resident. So they still exist, but in a much more limited fashion. Um, More likely in the average neighborhood, there is going to be a community garden that might be doing composting, but they might not be even advertising it. So you
Yeah.
could always walk into a community garden and ask. But yeah, a lot of those drop off sites were eliminated with budget cuts.
Okay, and one more thing was that, yeah, no, yeah, because you mentioned that's what right now what I do. I separate the yard waste and the food, waste. I have two bags. So is it okay to combine them both as long as you put them in the brown bin?
Yep, it could all be combined. Any yard waste that is mixed with food has to be in a containerized in the bin.
Yeah.
But it's perfectly fine to mix it all up.
Okay, you made
I
my
think that'll
life
make life a lot easier.
you made my life a lot easier because I've been
Yeah, for
separating them
sure.
because I wasn't sure.
Nope.
But I
Yeah, it could
really,
all go together.
yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, I
Tate.
really thank you. No, I'm going to say thank you. I'll let someone else, I have some more questions, but I'll let someone else ask. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
I see Gabrielle. I see Gabrielle hands again. I don't know if you have a question. Again.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions I thought of. So the first one is, um, so if I have like a can of food or whatever, what's so obviously like the food stuff in it, like needs to be like, might need to be like rinsed out or whatever. What's the best way to get to sort of like recycle both the can and compost the, whatever is,
You mean if it was like canned goods from a grocery store, you mean?
yeah, like, cat food, tuna fish, soup,
Yeah. Oh,
whatever.
and that's a good point. I said like pet waste can't go in, but I definitely put my cat's food that he doesn't eat into the compost because it is food waste, right?
So,
Um,
so should I
so
like?
that could,
I
yeah.
mean, do you like rinse it like into like something? Do you like rinse it onto like a paper towel or something like that, and then put that in, or
Yeah, so
what's the way to?
this is all I like to go the extra mile too. So you can rinse it out. So let's talk a little bit about plastic and metal recycling because we do get this question: how clean does a container have to be before it goes into the plastic or metal recycling? The answer is mildly rinsed, but it does not have to be spotless of food. It can be food soiled lightly when it goes into the plastic recycling. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see a can that's partially filled with food. But if like your tomato sauce jar has visible residue of tomato sauce within it, that's fine. It does not have to be pristine to go into the recycling. Um, what happens is if you want to collect the food waste, for me at home, it all winds up going into the sink strainer in my sink. And I just take the whole sink strainer and I dump that into the compost. If you want to use a paper towel that has already been soiled and kind of wipe it out and put that in the compost, feel free to do it. Um, again, don't let the average person think they must go to that degree because it's really not, you're not going to be dinged by sanitation on every little speck of food. It's going to be more like, is it clear that this person is just putting food into the trash? That's really kind of what we're getting at there. But yes, definitely use old paper towels and wipe that stuff out, or do the sink strainer like I do.
And my other question is, um, so I don't work in CV17, but since I have you anyway, like my workplace really hasn't done a lot to sort of provide any employees any guidance on. I work for a large, you know, employer like with an office in New York City and in the like in Manhattan, and they haven't given us any guidance whatsoever on what our responsibilities are while we're at work. Um, do we have responsibilities to compost when we're on the clock at work?
So not for composting yet. For, composting right now is limited. So let's talk about private businesses first of all. Private for-profit businesses are required to recycle paper, plastic, and metal, but all private hauling of that type has to be done by a private hauler. All businesses must have private haulers, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a Goldman Sachs, whoever you are, that has to be collected by a private carter. The Department of Sanitation got out of the business waste business decades ago because it was really just a mob racket and that separation became very clear. So the Department of Sanitation only handles residential material and a limited number of nonprofits or city agencies. Everything else has to be a private carter. They are required to do it. It is not perfectly enforced.
What,
And for composting, it has only been rolled out to larger chains thus far. There is not a mandate for every office building yet to provide composting access.
state agency?
A state agency, well, the dirty secret is a lot of the city and state agencies are not in compliance with these things at all. And the city and state isn't necessarily, I think, in the habit of finding itself. So, yes, it is not perfect. And sometimes the city falls down on actually providing a good example to others. Yeah.
Yeah, I work for a state agency, and it's been a little bit frustrating. So there isn't any special. They don't have any sort of special dispensation not to do composting, if I understand you correctly.
No, I think it's they provide a lighter touch. Basically, you can know if you look up the address on the Department of Sanitation's website, if your
Mhm.
building's address, your work building's address comes up there, it'll show that collection can happen there. and technically that building should be in compliance. But whether or not a state agency is actually going to get fined by the city, I think is another question entirely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Gabriel. And I think the last question will go to Miss Adele Bennett because we can't keep Teddy for the entire night, right? So the last question to Miss Adele Bennett. Miss Adele, can you unmute and try to ask your question? Miss Adele Bennett? Because I think she put,
I'm here.
yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
No, my question was in regards to the big brown bags that you buy from the hardware store. Can they
Mm-hmm.
are they still going to pick those up curbside?
Yes. So lawn paper bags, the big brown lawn and leaf waste bags, definitely will be picked up as long as they don't have food waste in them. That would not be a suitable thing to put food waste in, but definitely put all your leaves and your lawn waste in those bags and you could do those.
Okay, so I am sure that I call everyone for questions. Did I miss anyone? I recognize Miss Una Taylor, who is doing a great job in the park with me, planting and do all of those things. So I just wanted to know if there is, Mr. George, you have a question? A quick one?
Yeah, no. I was just asking Mr. Tedesco if he could put he gave like what the contact information, the curbside
Yep. I'm
compost.
going to type it into the chat.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
going
you
to
very
type it into
much.
the chat.
Thank you very much. That was it.
And I
Yes,
will
brother.
I will forward the slides to you, so you can all have the information because it's a very important thing. This is our big training today, but this is not the last one because I feel your excitement, and I will schedule something after today.
Uh, sorry. The link to look up whether a building is subject to composting. You
Yeah. So if you go to nyc.gov/dsny. That is the Department of Sanitation's website. And there should be a little collection. I think if you do the collection tab, if you do the collection tab on that site, and then there's a button that says find my collection schedule, and you just put in any address. If the address comes up, there's obligations there. If the address doesn't come up, the city is not picking up, but it doesn't mean that they aren't required to have a private hauler necessarily. So
okay? Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Last call for question. That's it, right? I just wanted to make sure before I ask for Mr. Teddy to wrap up. That's it, right? Thank you. Let me double check the chat and see if there is no hand raised. I think we are good. I will ask you now to have the closing words. It was a great pleasure to have you tonight. I know that we will definitely have you again. In closure, you have the mic. You can add, whatever you think is missing for this presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just thank you so much. It's great to do work with organizations like yours, with people who really take these types of things seriously. Spread our contact information, that email, far and wide for people who might have some questions for us. And really just encourage your neighbors to do it. Fill up the cans. Don't be too paranoid about am I doing it perfectly. Just get the food waste into the bins. That's the best way for this program to be successful. And thanks so much.
Thank you for coming, and I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Good night.
Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Good
Good night.
night.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So, we had a long agenda for tonight. However, the presentation was great. I didn't want to, prevent you from, because it's in the park and beautification. So, the presentation was great. I didn't want to cut it. However, I put the rest of the agenda in the chat. did you all see the minutes of May 2025? Because if not, we will not take a vote. I just wanted to make sure that you saw it before I can ask for a vote to accept the minute. Or is there anyone who did not see the minute so we can put it for the next meeting? No one has. Can I have, if you accept the minute, can I have all say yes? Or just give me a thumbs up?
I say yes. Vanetta Sylvester.
All right, thank you. Anything to check on the minute? Nothing. So everything is good. I just wanted to make sure that is accepted as minute of the May 2025. All right, thank you so much. Also for my report, I can be very brief because we are running out of time. During this week, from the last meeting until today, I work with the board. Miss Farah created the flyer for us for the event on on August 16, which is the fair that we'll be doing. She also created a letter that we will be sending out to the community to invite them to participate. Additionally, she created the meet and greet flyer for June 20th, where we'll honor Mr. George, not this George, but another George. She's the one who played the Santa for us, every December. We decided to honor him, but it will be on June 20th, on a Friday at 10 a.m., I think. So the letter will be out. The flyer also, is ready. What I want from the committee members is to share that for the people in our neighborhood, because sometimes people will be complaining. They don't know where is the community board. They don't know what we are doing. So anyone who can make it, I will work with you so we can be there talking to the community, actually what the park does, and then interacting with them. If you have business cards, whatever, for us also to network, that would be an opportunity for us to network among ourselves, and also that will be open to the people in the community so they can stop by on that day. So if you are available, that will be the best day in your life to come and enjoy the parks and meet your fellow community members. I just want to know if there is a quick question. And also on the chat, I will post the link to the chat. We have a good chat where we go back and forth with those little discussion, because our meeting really is a 1 hour or 1 hour something. There is not enough time really to discuss a lot of things. If someone has a quick question on what I just discussed, you can ask me a question. The second thing, this is the dog waste bags that we are working on. I am putting together an email to provide an answer to the park manager. And for that, this is where I want you to focus a little bit, give me ideas. In like 10 minutes, we need to close this meeting, but I still want you to give me some ideas, and I will put the link for the chat, for our chat room. If you want to be part of it for our discussion, please do so. Miss Bennett, do you have something to say? I will give you the mic, and then anyone who wants to say something, please raise your hand, because we don't have a lot of time left.
Okay, it's in regards to the sidewalk, overgrown trees. That is the responsibility of the Parks Department. And I'm getting a lot of complaints from neighbors about these trees not being taken care of. What can we do about that?
I still have had time to capture everything. I heard portion of it. You can put it on the chat and I can follow up, because I didn't get the full idea that you wanted to convey to us.
Just overgrown trees, sidewalk trees in our area.
Are you saying that you have sidewalk trees in your area that are not well maintained? Is the question?
Yes.
Okay. So what I will ask you to do first, provide me with the location, or I will talk about all the sidewalks for all the trees. If you give me a location or any picture, I can follow up on that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Someone else raised their hand. Let me see who raised their hand. Member Gabriel.
Hi. So yeah, I'll elaborate further on this in the discussion. in the WhatsApp chat if I have to. But what really bothers me about the park manager's answers to us is that it's sort of a when you kind of get right down to it and unpack, you know, the excuses that she gave, um, they could they could sort of be used to as an argument not to have any parks at all, and that just seems I don't like the underlying philosophy there, and the there's a kind of a cynicism to it, and I think that's something that we should express in a letter. That's all.
I agree. So from your idea, it should not be a. I think
I
what
mean,
I will do,
by
I will
her
put the letter
argument,
together, and
yeah,
then we can work on that because my understanding is that you feel that the answer because I share the answer for people who don't know. I had this back and forth with the park manager, and I shared the answer to the chat, and people comment on that. So what member Gabriel is saying is that he disagrees from the answer from the park manager, and his advice is to have a formal letter explaining, our position.
yeah. I just think the park manager's answer is extremely cynical and pessimistic and shows just very little faith in humanity. And I don't think that that's what good governance is about.
Okay, thank you. Yes. I also see member Walsh. Yes, you
Yes,
can
yes, I just had a quick question about the green streets that are in our neighborhood. I'm not sure if they're taken care of by parks, but it would be nice to see
Yeah.
if they could be, I guess better groomed and well taken care of to help beautify, our district.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, so I take note of that. Usually, the parks, I work with the park manager for things inside of the park and with other people for something outside of the park. A portion of it can be sanitation depending on what it is, but usually I work with the Department of Sanitation or other department to see what can be done. And I also work with the city council members. So wherever you see something, you can, send me an email or put it on the chat room, and then I can see who can I contact for that. Usually the park manager work within in like things inside of the parks or around the park, not something elsewhere, not like all the trees in our district. So if there is something that you can see, let me know. But if there is something that is dangerous, I put it on the 311 calls if it's really something that we need to address that is urgent. Someone asked to clarify what's the green streets.
So usually green streets are like the little medians on like for instance the biggest one that I know of in this district is on Utica and Empire Boulevard where they plant a whole bunch of trees and flowers and things like that. And I believe the organization that takes care of it is called Green Streets.
We
So instead of, go ahead.
wanted to say that we usually work with partnership for parks to address the little green space, like we have on Ralph Avenue. We have several of them. If you have one specifically that to spot us something, you can take a picture, or if you are talking about all of them, that's something different. We will see what bigger agency, but we also work with some, local, I would say, agency to address specific needs. But if there is something, you can always let us know. And if it's a big issue, then we take it to the council member and see what else we can do.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. I see also member Judith. Yes, you can unmute and ask your question, and then you will follow by member Vonita.
Okay, this real quickly. You mentioned the park managers, and I
Yes.
know it's outside of this area, but I wanted to know how do I find out about a park manager for the Tilden Park because there's a tennis court there that's locked up, and I don't know what's going on over there. So how do I find out who's in charge?
Okay, the park manager is Daniel, and we had several. Um, I think Mr. George Tate can even talk about our work with Tilden Park. What happened is there is a big project for that park, and they were supposed to do a project, a senior center, and they changed their mind. It's a bunch of things going on for Tilden Park. We had a last visit, I think, Mr. Tate called me last summer, where we talk about what is next for this park. There is something going on, but it's a capital improvement project that will take time. For that, Danielle Arieta from Council Member Farah Lewis can come back to provide more information on the big project for Tilden Park. That's why they never did anything, but there is a big things going on back and forth. And our community, we did several walkthrough. We are really working on to see what can be done. But the park manager is Danielle.
Thank you.
Not Danielle for the council member, another Danielle. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also see member Voneta. Did you speak already? I don't think so.
I just wanted to say that the meeting that you had posted a link to for the urban forest was really informative. I went to the East New York session, met a lot of people who were very knowledgeable about different resources regarding the trees. One thing I did learn was that developments are supposed to have a tree per every 25 feet of frontage, which I don't see happening with a lot of the newer developments and apartment buildings that are being thrown up in East Flatbush. And also for watering the trees and maintaining the trees, we can get permits to be able to open the fire hydrants to water the trees on our block. So there are ways that we can get involved in participating in the tree maintenance. And I just wanted maybe on the next agenda that, maybe put together just some time where people who had gone to the meeting can like just share pointers that they learned about the different things that would be helpful to the group.
Thank you. That is very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Now it's 9. I will get back to you, member, because I wanted to work with you and to put something together. If you think that you have enough time to assist, that would be fantastic for us as well. I see some other hands, but here's the deal. It's already 9 p.m. I don't want to keep everyone on this line. So what we can do, we can put some of those items on the chat room and we can vote on them in the future, or we can also send an email to capture some of those very important things that need your attention, including the dog waste bags for the pots and some other items. So between now and the next meeting, you will receive some emails from me, but they will come from the board where I will ask you for your input. If there is anything, it's already 9 p.m. I will ask you if there is any important things that can't wait until the email. Say it now before I close this session because it's already 9 p.m. Yes.
Yes, we were promised signage in all the parks in our district in regards to dogs and smoking in the park.
I think this was also so mentioned during the last. Correct me, Gabriel, if I'm wrong, because I think I posted that in terms of signage. I think there was a lack of funding or something for this same project that we're trying to accomplish for the signage. I will review everything that was said in that email from the park manager, and I will get back to you because I think that there is some feedback as well for the signage that we wanted to put for this, dog waste. I think there is something also.
I believe Daniel
I
Herrera
posted the link.
promised
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, I posted the link in the chat now, just now. The link to the chat, the park community WhatsApp chat. I just put it in that now. I can put it again. Yes. Any last before I close this session?
One last. It was just to piggyback
Okay,
on what
you are
no,
last.
for last. No, it's just a piggyback on what Gabriel said about the park manager. Just because someone has that kind of attitude about what we want, I'm sure we can bubble it up or have a conversation with the council person, correct? Because it's what
Yes.
the group wants. It's not, they may not necessarily have the best interests of what the group wants. So we just need to just make sure we convey that. That the buck
Agree.
doesn't stop with the park manager.
Agree. So I want all of you to participate because from what I understand, a simple email is not what we want. It's a formal letter. So I will want your input to have, to put something together before I send it, back to the park manager. So we
Okay.
have work to do. Yes. All right. I need a motion to close this meeting tonight. And I think all of you will make it happen because we have a lot to discuss, but because of time, we have to cut it short. Can someone make a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Can
I
someone
second it.
second? Oh
I
my
second it,
God.
Renata.
So
I
quick.
second it.
Thank you so much. And before you leave, if there is anything from this chat room that you want to copy, do it because you might need some links or something on the chat. Do it now before you leave. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, we have park cleanup to do. We have June 20th meet and greet to do. We have this letter to put together. We have a lot of things to do. So be ready for my, back and forth asking you to take leadership for anything. We have Miss Rona Taylor. I do park cleanup with her. We will work together with something, and you have your gloves on to do some park cleanups. And congratulations to co-chair Nicole Julius. She will be with me to make our neighborhood beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicole, for taking this wonderful task. We have a lot to do together. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.